Have you ever looked into your child's eyes and known with painful certainty that they were falling in love with the wrong person? Have you ever sat at your own daughter's wedding, listening to sweet vows echo through the room, and felt deep down like you were attending the funeral of her last ounce of innocence? I have. I sat in silence as my daughter walked down the aisle, glowing her hand, clinging tightly to the man she believed was her whole world. While I, the only one who knew he saw her as nothing more than a ticket to money, power, and freedom from responsibility, had to stay quiet. I couldn't scream. I couldn't stop the ceremony. But I could do one thing. I could make a plan. A plan to make sure that no one could touch my daughter without facing the greatest reckoning of their life. And if you think this is just a simple revenge story, it's not. This is a story of restoration, of a mother, of a daughter, and of a shattered trust learning to believe again. Bar Chapter 1. She said I do. I whispered, and he had no idea he was about to lose everything. There are days that stay with you forever. Not because they're beautiful, but because from that moment on, everything changes. Forever. My daughter's wedding, Emma's wedding, took place on a May morning. The weather was strangely perfect, not a cloud in the sky. The sunlight was gentle. The air carried the scent of jasmine, mingled with the aged oak of the old chapel. Guests were impeccably dressed, and everything shimmered in gold, from the satin chairs to the mother-in-law's pearl necklace. They called it the wedding of the year. As for me, I saw only one thing: the empty chair. The chair in the front row on the right beside me. The chair that should have been occupied by Zach, my son Emma's brother. But today it sat empty. No one asked, no one dared to. Because I made sure it stayed that way, deliberately. I knew Emma noticed. Her eyes flickered for just a second, but I saw her heart skip a beat of disappointment and suspicion. Emma is a sensitive girl. She has good instincts, but she's easily defeated by her emotions. She loved Daniel with her whole heart so much that she was willing to ignore everything else. And Daniel knew that. He was handsome, charming, knew how to win over the elders, and had a special way of appealing to women who'd been hurt. Women like me. But I had once been the most naive woman in the room. I knew exactly what a gold digger looked like, and Daniel, he was no different from the man who left me penniless at 27, just more refined, more polished, and with an MBA. Everyone adored Daniel. Emma's friends called him perfect. The bride smiled like she'd stepped out of a fairy tale. Only I wasn't smiling, not because I was bitter, but because I too had once been the glowing bride. And I knew sometimes that wedding day smile is the last moment you're truly happy. When the band began playing Can't Help Falling in Love, I stood and reached out my hand to Emma. She took it and stepped into the mother-daughter dance, her head resting gently, trembling slightly on my shoulder. "I'm glad you came," Emma whispered. "I thought you might refuse." I smiled. "How could I miss the day my daughter gets married? Zach didn't come." She breathed, her voice thinner than mist. "Did you say something to him?" I gently squeezed her hand. "Let him enjoy tonight," I murmured, my eyes fixed on Daniel, raising his glass with the groomsmen. "Tomorrow morning, he'll understand. Some absences are intentional." Emma lifted her head slightly as if to ask a question, but I placed a kiss on her forehead and smiled. A mother doesn't need to scream to protect her child. Sometimes the best protection is letting them live the moment fully and only then pulling them out of the dream. I let her marry him. I let him believe he had won. And I left one chair empty amidst the applause. Not because someone didn't show up, but because I wanted him to feel the absence of something he didn't yet know was the most important thing of all. A silent warning hidden inside a perfect wedding. Chapter 2. A Small Nod. In the words that changed everything, I left the wedding before the reception even began. No one noticed, People were too busy clinking glasses, snapping selfies, filming TikToks. Meanwhile, I quietly slipped out the back door, kicked off my heels, and sighed as if I had just wrapped up a long, demanding performance. When I opened the VIP dressing room door, Margaret Chin was already waiting. Margaret was Emma's wedding planner, a petite Asian woman, impeccably professional and notoriously discreet. She had planned weddings for billionaires, political heirs, and even celebrities whose names never made it to the press. But to me, Margaret was something else. She was the spark that ignited my suspicion. 2 months ago, when I was still caught between doubt and denial about Daniel, Margaret had called me after a routine meeting about floral arrangements. "There's something I'm not sure I should mention," she began, her voice calm, like she was discussing cake flavors. "But as the bride's mother, you deserve to know." I didn't speak. I simply nodded. And Margaret told me. "I happened to overhear Daniel asking one of my staff about Emma's inheritance. Specifically, her private landholdings company shares trust funds, even the assets your late husband left behind." I didn't react immediately. I simply closed my eyes for a few seconds, then opened them and asked one question. "Are you sure?" Margaret answered without hesitation. "I didn't record it, but I have a witness. And honestly, this isn't the first time I've seen this pattern." I believed her. Not because of what she said, but because I had once been the woman asked about her net worth the night before her wedding. And that time I ignored my instincts. This time was different. I didn't postpone the wedding, didn't confront him, didn't warn Emma. I stayed silent. Because I needed more than suspicion. Because I knew men like Daniel, the clever ones, always know how to twist your reactions into jealous paranoia or controlling tendencies. I didn't want to be the overbearing mother in Emma's eyes. I wanted the truth to speak for itself. I wanted Daniel to walk straight into the trap. And I knew exactly who could help me make that happen: Zach. Zach is the quiet type. Calm, reserved, razor sharp. He takes after his father, knows how to listen, how to hold back and observe, then strike like the final move in a dying chess match. I called Zach home, but didn't give details. I handed him a folder on Daniel, his background, his work schedule, a few suspicious threads Margaret had uncovered. "Find me a reason to cancel this wedding," I told him. "But if you find nothing, then I'll give them my blessing." Zach looked at me, slightly surprised, then nodded. 3 weeks later, he came back, with a hard drive, and a face void of emotion. "You want to know who he really is?" he asked. I didn't need to answer. I just opened the drive and began going through the files. From that moment on, Daniel was no longer a charming groom. He became an open case file, a full-blown investigation. Chapter 3, Emails, Hotel Rooms, and an Ex named Laya. The hard drive Zach handed me had a small label on it written in slanted letters. "Only open if you truly want to know." I chuckled when I saw it. That boy never changes, always warning me to brace myself for the truth. But I'd been ready, for a long time now. I plugged it into my laptop. One folder appeared on the screen. Daniel. Raw. Inside was a neatly organized system of data screenshots, phone recordings, hotel booking histories, messages, and one subfolder labeled simply Laya. Laya. That name made my blood run cold. Laya used to be Emma's best friend. They were inseparable in college. Roommates, travel buddies, Emma once said, "If I ever get married, I want Laya standing beside me as my maid of honor." But a year ago, they cut ties. Emma never explained why. She simply said, "We just don't vibe anymore." Now I knew why. Zach hadn't just tracked Daniel on social media. He used OSINT open source intelligence and discovered Daniel had a pattern of checking in with different women on platforms like TripAdvisor and discrete hotel apps. A pattern emerged. Every few weeks, Daniel would disappear for 2 days, claiming he was on business trips. And those business trips, they perfectly matched the weekends Emma was away doing charity work. I opened each file, one text from Daniel to someone labeled simply L. "Everything's going according to plan. Just a few more months and you and I are out of here." Another, "She's as clueless as ever." Don't be jealous. All I need is her signature. Not once did he mention Emma by name, but the implication was razor sharp, undeniable. Zach had even recorded a phone call of Daniel booking a beachfront hotel. He used a fake name, but the phone number, it was the same one linked to his bank account. A foolish mistake. One he never thought would be used against him. I sat still, eyes fixed on the flickering screen. Each file I opened was another knife slicing through the foundation of trust I had once built for Emma, and I knew there was no turning back. I sent one email to the address Zach had traced from the folder, Leah Dodar Harrisa. Subject: maybe you need a way out too. 3 days later, I received a reply. No greeting, no explanation, just one attachment and a single line. I thought I was the only one. The file contained screenshots of emails between Daniel and Leah spanning the past 11 months. They outlined a clear plan: win over Emma, get married, wait for the trust fund to unlock, then vanish together to Spain. I stared at a photo of Emma hugging Daniel at their engagement party. Her eyes were glowing blissfully, unaware of betrayal, and I realized there were no tears left in me, only the silence of a storm still gathering. Chapter 4. She betrayed my daughter. Then broke under the weight of her own conscience, I met Leah at a small cafe tucked behind a wall of bougainvillea, the kind of place where people speak just loud enough to hear their own breathing. She arrived 10 minutes late, no makeup eyes, swollen red hands trembling as she poured water. I said nothing. I let her be the one to speak first. I know. You have every right to slap me in the middle of this cafe, Leah croaked, not daring to look up. You could throw a glass in my face and I wouldn't stop you. I looked at the young woman sitting across from me, the same girl who once called me the most badass mom on earth during one of Emma's birthday dinners. Now she looked like a child who'd just been slapped awake by life itself. Why, I asked, keeping my voice as steady as I could. Leah was silent for a moment. Then she opened her bag and pulled out a stack of papers. Printed emails. Every single one Daniel had sent, every enticing phrase, every poisonous promise. At first I was deluded too, she confessed. I thought I was special, the one he really loved. Emma. She was too innocent. I thought I was smarter, more deserving. I nodded slightly. Not judging. Judgment only makes people build walls higher. But then he started asking about your family's money, details about the company, shares, property, titles, trust fund timelines. He told me, if you want an easy life, just stay quiet and let me handle things. Leah choked on her own words. That's when I realized I wasn't the woman he loved. I was a tool, just like Emma. I stayed quiet. The pain in her voice wasn't fake. It was raw shame, and I understood. When a woman has been deeply wounded, the first forgiveness she needs is from herself. I'm not asking for forgiveness, she whispered. But if you still want to stop this wedding, I can help. Every email, every voice memo, every private chat calendar, invite bank ID. I have it all. If you need evidence, I've got it. I looked at Leah not as the girl who stole my daughter's fiancé, but as a woman on the edge of redemption. Would you go public? I asked bluntly. She swallowed hard, then nodded. Emma deserves to hear the truth from me, she said. Not a screen, not someone else. I'll stand in front of her and tell her everything. I didn't hug her, didn't forgive her, not yet. But I believed her, because in those eyes I saw someone who had once been weak and no longer wanted to hide. That day Leah and I made a plan, a simple one, but undeniable. Because if Daniel could win with sweet words, he would lose with truths too sharp to erase. We didn't need to scream, we just needed the light. Chapter 5. I didn't scream. I just quietly changed the rules. I've seen enough women rise with tears only to end up bruised and broken. I used to be one of them. But this time I didn't want to win with emotion. I wanted to win with the law. That afternoon I called Richard, the family lawyer who'd been with us for over 20 years. a balding man who always wore red bow ties and spoke in philosophical analogies. I kept it brief. Daniel is about to marry Emma. I need to restructure the trust so that he can't touch a single cent. Make it legal, clean, and don't let Emma know, not yet. Richard didn't ask why. He just sighed. So, it's finally your move on the chessboard. Within a week, the new clauses were added. The beneficiary could not withdraw from the trust unless the marriage lasted at least 5 years, or if evidence of fraud, manipulation, or financial exploitation was discovered. Everything was signed, filed, and legally sealed. Emma was still the beneficiary. But Daniel, he would never be allowed to touch even the shadow of that money. Next, I met with Jennifer, our estate attorney. I asked her to update the will. If Emma were to divorce due to infidelity or deceit, her share of the estate would remain entirely intact, and the party who caused the damage would be permanently barred from accessing any related assets. Jennifer looked at me, half respect, half curiosity. "You're really going to let the wedding happen?" I nodded. "Every girl deserves a beautiful ceremony, but not everyone standing next to her deserves to wear a white suit." Zach handled the rest, gathering and verifying evidence. Every email from Daniel was authenticated by Laya's passwords. Every audio recording had its original metadata. Even the plane tickets to Barcelona Daniel's post-honeymoon escape plan were printed, time-stamped, and sent to my legal team as reference material. And Laya, she took it upon herself to write a full statement. No sugarcoating, no excuses, just the facts. Cold, guilty, brutal. I'm not asking for Emma's forgiveness, she told me. I just want to help wake her up before someone else drives her life off a cliff. I looked at the three of them, Zach, Leah, Richard, each carrying their own scars, their own reasons, but all standing on the side of truth. The plan was never to stop the wedding. No, I had no intention of letting Daniel escape that easily. I wanted him to walk down the aisle thinking he'd won. And the next morning, I wanted him to wake up to find his entire future locked away from wealth, power, and prestige by the very signature he proudly gave at the altar. I wanted his collapse to have no gunshots, no crying, just an email in the morning with the subject line, "Congratulations, groom. Now read what you just signed." Chapter 6. The wedding happened, and I just sat there smiling. The wedding unfolded on a golden afternoon. The sky was impossibly clear. Sunlight streamed through the stained glass of the chapel, casting Emma in a divine glow, a bride wrapped in a gown that shimmered like it had been sewn from light itself. Everyone saw love. What I saw was a plan in motion. Daniel stood at the end of the aisle looking every bit the modern-day Prince white suit, flawless smile eyes locked on the bride. I won't deny it, he was good. Every gesture, every soft touch, every tender tuck of hair behind her ear, all choreographed to perfection. Like a script he had rehearsed for months. But I was the only one who knew behind those gentle eyes was ambition. I had read every word he typed to Leia. A few months after the wedding, we can pull the money and fly straight to Europe. She believes every word I say. Her mom is so filthy rich, it's stupid. I memorized each period, each slang term, each insult like a blade, and I sat there front row, in a simple gray dress, hair pulled back, silent, smiling, not from joy, but because I knew the greatest falls always come when a man thinks he's on top of the world. Zach didn't attend. The seat beside me remained empty. No one dared to ask why. That chair was my final warning to Daniel. A calculated absence, a strategic void. Emma looked radiant. I didn't blame her. How could she have known she was living in a romance film, a script written by Daniel himself? She had no idea that in just a few hours, her fairy tale husband would become a con man caught in the spotlight. When the priest said, "Do you take this man to be your husband, to love, honor, and cherish for all the days of your life?" Emma nodded, eyes glistening, and Daniel nodded too. Only he didn't know that this nod was him signing the death certificate of his entire scheme. He didn't know the wealth he craved was locked down with hidden clauses he could never untangle. That his little con was about to be cracked wide open in less than 24 hours. That the ring he was now wearing was a golden cuff for the cage he'd built himself into. The reception that followed looked like something out of a dream, champagne flowing white roses, blooming a live jazz band, guests laughing and toasting to love. Daniel raised his glass, saying all the right things about Emma, about destiny, about the incredible family I'm honored to join. I stood in the corner, watching him like one watches a child playing on the edge of a cliff. No one stopped him. No one needed to, because the fall that was coming didn't need a push from me. All it needed was the morning light and one cold email. Chapter 7. The next morning, he woke up, and everything had turned to dust. Daniel always liked to sleep in. He used to tell Emma, "Mornings are your time to relax. I'll handle the rest later." I used to think he was just lazy, but after that morning I realized it was his way of controlling things. Let others begin the day without him so he could insert himself later, once they'd grown used to managing without his presence. But the morning after the wedding, Daniel didn't get to sleep in. Emma wasn't beside him. The hotel room was eerily still. Only the faint scent of perfume lingered on the pillow. Yesterday's wedding card still sat on the table, next to a small note handwritten in neat script. "Check your inbox." Just 4 words. No name. No greeting. Daniel frowned and reached for his phone. But Face ID didn't work. The screen blinked. This iCloud account has been remotely signed out. He scrambled to his laptop, opened Gmail, and there it was. An email from Emma. No subject line. No formatting. Just one quiet beginning. "I think you should know. The first time I ever lied to you was when I said I had no doubts. I had read that email. I wrote it for her. Let Emma revise the tone to match her voice. But the content, it came from me. From Zach, from Leia, from every person Daniel ever underestimated. The email contained 3 PDF attachments. 1, the full email threads between Daniel and Leia, every two-face message, every step of their detailed scheme. 2, the audio recording of Daniel discussing asset stripping, secretly recorded by Leia during their final trip together. 3, the updated trust agreement with the clause stripping him of access upon any evidence of financial manipulation. And at the end of the email, 1 single line, the one that sent Daniel into freefall wishing you happiness in the marriage you thought was a ticket to Europe. But now, it's just a suspended sentence for you. He bolted out of the hotel calling his lawyer. No one answered. His credit card was declined. His bank accounts were frozen. Every exit he thought he'd secured collapsed like dominoes. The flight to Barcelona canceled the night before. An email to Leia. The only reply, blocked. And Emma, she was sitting beside me on a train heading home. Hands wrapped around a cup of hot coffee, eyes distant but calm. I didn't need to ask how she felt. She said only one thing. "You knew everything, didn't you?" I looked her straight in the eyes. No denial. Yes. But I waited so you wouldn't just see the truth. You'd understand it. Emma nodded. No tears, no screams. She had lost a fantasy but kept herself. And Daniel, I don't know where he is now. And I don't need to. Because in this game I didn't need to strike him down with my own hands. I let his illusion of victory do it for me. Chapter 8, the con man was hunted and my daughter began to heal. I don't know exactly what Daniel did right after reading the email. I'm not the type to plant hidden cameras. I didn't need to see him slamming tables, cursing, or running in circles calling lawyers. Unnecessary. Because I know real collapse doesn't come with shouting. It comes in those silent moments. When you realize you've lost a game you thought you had already won. Just a few days after the wedding, the messages started pouring in. A friend forwarded me a post from a financial discussion forum. Groom turned entrepreneur, exposed as gold digger wedding, used as a front for inheritance fraud. The post spread like wildfire. Daniel's name popped up across countless groups. Some even claimed he'd done the same to 2 other women in the past. But no one had proof until now. A week later, the company Daniel once worked for released an official statement. The employee in question has been terminated due to severe personal misconduct. All files have been handed over to authorities. He lost his job, lost his reputation, lost every chance of touching a single cent from Emma. Legally, thanks to the clauses I had amended in the trust fund, Daniel had no right to demand. A division of marital assets, not even a fraction. In fact, due to verified evidence of deception, Emma now had the right to countersue on grounds of fraudulent marriage, but she didn't. I asked her gently, "Do you want to sue him? I've got lawyers. I've got the full file." She shook her head. "No, Mom. I don't want my name next to his ever again, not even on a legal document." That answer left me speechless. Not because she was weak, but because she had grown strong in the right way. Emma rented a small apartment, leaving behind the luxury penthouse Daniel used to parade through like it was his. She returned to her design work, gradually picking up the unfinished projects she once put on hold. Laia sent one final email in apology, then disappeared entirely from social media. I don't know where she went, but I believe those who are truly remorseful find a way to move forward without hiding. And Daniel, no one knows for sure. Some say he's waiting tables in a small town. Others whisper he changed his name and moved abroad. To me, it doesn't matter, because what he lost wasn't money. It was trust, reputation, the chance to rebuild anything with anyone who ever knew his name. And Emma, she lost a husband, but kept her clarity, her freedom, and the most beautiful part. She didn't fall apart. She didn't go searching for answers. She didn't blame her mother. She simply said, "You let me walk into the storm myself. But you were the one who built the shelter. Thank you, Mom." And in that moment, I finally let myself breathe. Chapter 9. I don't blame you, Mom. I thank you for letting me fall once, so I wouldn't collapse forever. A month after the wedding, Emma and I sat together on the balcony of my house, the same balcony where she used to eat breakfast every weekend as a little girl. The garden below was still peaceful lavender pots swaying gently in the wind. Everything looked the same, except for her. Gone was the impulsiveness, the fairy tale sparkle. Gone were the eyes that searched mine for approval after every word. She sat with her back straight, sipped her tea, and broke the silence with one sentence that made me still. "You knew from the beginning, didn't you?" I didn't pretend. I didn't play dumb. I nodded softly. Yes. But I couldn't just point at Daniel and say, "He's bad." If I had done that, you would have thought I was jealous, controlling, or overbearing. You would have defended him, instead of seeing him for who he really was. Emma gave a faint, bittersweet smile. "So you let me marry him, as a way to let me walk into my own trap." I took her hand in mine. "No, I let you marry him because I knew you needed to make one big mistake to truly grow. But I never let him hurt you too deeply. I had the net ready. I just waited for the right moment to pull it." She looked at me for a long time. No resentment, no hurt, only understanding. Then Emma pulled a small object from her pocket, her wedding ring. I kept it not out of sentiment, but to remind myself, never again will a piece of metal define my worth. I had no words, only a nod, my throat tightening. "I don't blame you, Mom," she continued calmly. "On the contrary, I know if it hadn't been for you, I wouldn't have stopped in time. I wouldn't have protected what's still pure in me. I used to want a husband, to have a family, to have someone who'd be there forever. But now, I understand the one who stays forever is the one who stands behind you when you fall, not the one who promises to hold your hand, then pushes you off the cliff." I looked at her, this child who once nervously asked me how to choose a wedding dress, now speaking truths that exceeded her years. And I felt something lift, not because Daniel had been punished, but because Emma had become a woman who could protect herself. And that was the real victory. Chapter 10. The Empty Chair, the Abandoned Ring, and a Mother Who Quietly Became a Hero. Last week, I happened to walk past the chapel where Emma once had her wedding. It had been rented out to another couple. They'd also chosen white veils, Lily's golden candlelight, and a fairy tale choir. I stood outside, looking through the window pane, watching the bride glow as she walked down the aisle, and a part of me silently wished them well. But then my eyes landed on the front row seat on the right, the one I had intentionally left empty that day. That chair confused a lot of people. Some guests thought Zach had gotten into an accident. Others assumed I'd forgotten to invite someone important. But the truth was simpler. I left that chair empty. To remind myself that I didn't need anyone to sit there in order to fulfill the role of protector. Me, the mother who had once been called too sharp, too controlling, hard to love. I had chosen silence. I didn't interfere. I didn't scream. I didn't ruin the wedding I planned. I didn't strike, didn't insult, didn't fight back with pain. I chose instead to let my daughter feel love, trust deeply, and then see the truth for herself when she was ready. That empty chair was Zach's absence, but it was also where I let my rationality sit, watching, waiting. Cold enough not to overreact, warm enough to step in only when things were on the brink of collapse. And Emma's wedding ring. She placed it inside a velvet box, unlocked on a shelf in her room. She didn't throw it away. She didn't hold on to it either. Emma said, "The ring didn't do anything wrong, but it doesn't mean anything anymore, and I want to be strong enough to love again without letting this ring scare me." I held her in my arms for the first time in days, not to comfort her, but to thank her. Thank her for daring to trust, for daring to fall, for daring to rise again. And I silently thanked life itself for giving me a chance to be a real mother, not by paving the way, but by standing backstage, waiting for the right moment to quietly bring the curtain down. Sometimes the greatest victory for a mother is watching her child hurt once just enough to learn how not to hurt for the rest of her life. And sometimes an empty chair ends up being the most important seat in the entire play, called motherhood. I'm not a perfect woman. I've made mistakes. I've loved the wrong people. I've lost everything because I trusted the one man I truly believed would never betray me. But it was those very moments that turned me into a mother who not only loves, but quietly weaves a safety net long before her child ever senses danger. I don't need to be called a hero. I only need to see my daughter walking forward after her first fall, with eyes no longer filled with fear, with a heart strong enough to never let anyone else define her worth. If you are a mother, a sister, or simply a woman, sitting quietly in the dark after a betrayal, remember, this silence is not surrender. Forgiveness does not mean forgetting, and loving yourself has never been selfish. There are victories that require no trumpets, no applause. Sometimes, just standing tall after the storm is the loudest triumph of all.